Hello, everybody. My name is Siki Ballard. I'm the founder of Good Tree Capital, and I'm also the Chief Financial Officer of Elev8 Cannabis. We are very excited to have you here with us today. You've chosen to spend your weekend to listen to us talk about cannabis. So hopefully you get useful, helpful information from this so that when you start the process of going after your application, you can employ some of this information to help make it easier for you. We are presented with what I believe is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to generate wealth not only for yourselves, but for your children, and their children's children. And when I talk about children, I'm instantly reminded of my father. He's an 81-year-old man, or he'll be 81 in October, and that means he's seen a lot. He was alive when alcohol was illegal in the South. And back then, to make money, he and his boys made bootleg corn whiskey, and they would sell it in juke joints, places like Hoppo's from Color Purple. They had a whole operation down. You know, they had the distillation process down, they had distribution, they had customers. It was down to a science, including who was gonna be on lookout for the cops. On June 25th, Governor Pritzker signed into law a bill that I think is the gold standard for cannabis legalization nationwide. And the reason I believe it's the gold standard is two words: restorative justice. This is the first bill that puts the people who have borne the brunt of criminalization of cannabis at the center of the bill. It includes things like automatic expungement. It includes a litany of resources that are available for people who are looking for financing and other resources to help them get into the industry. Starting January 1st, New Year's, adults over the age of 21 will be able to purchase and possess cannabis legally. It's very important to note that there are still limitations to this. So, in terms of how much you can possess, you can't have more than an ounce or 30 grams of raw flower. You can't possess more than 500 milligrams of infused products like edibles, and you can't have more than 5 grams of concentrate products. The most important part is consumption. People think it's legal, so you can go light up on the sidewalk like you're smoking a cigarette. That's not the way it is. Public consumption remains illegal. One thing that I don't think is really well talked about is that in Colorado, which was the first state to legalize for adult use, when Colorado legalized, what happened was that arrest rates and the disparity in arrests between black youth and whites actually went up, not down. And the reason it went up was in part due to people just misunderstanding what was allowed and what wasn't allowed when it came to cannabis. And so it's important that we know that there are limitations to this legalization and you can't be on the sidewalk smoking a joint. I'll start by talking about the licenses that are available as well as the timeline. Then I'll define social equity, and then from there, give helpful ideas about how you might finance the business. At that point, Sheun will come in and he'll talk about real estate. He'll also cover the application process and eligibility, and we'll close with what it takes to run a dispensary. The state has created entirely new license types in this legislation, and these licenses are going to be granted on an extremely aggressive timeline. So a part of our goal here is to make sure you have the resources you need to be ready when the time comes for you to be ready. So there are 4 different types of licenses. One is the dispensary. That's where the end consumer goes to purchase their product. The second type of license is the craft grow license. This allows you to cultivate up to 14,000 square feet of canopy space. The third type of license is the infuser. This is when you take THC concentrate and you infuse it into products like brownies, edibles, topicals. And the fourth is transporter. This is the license type that allows you to distribute product from one licensee to another. So I'll dive a bit into each of these license types. With the dispensary, the state is going to release 185 new licenses in 2 different waves. No individual or entity can own more than 10 dispensary licenses. The cost of pursuing a dispensary license is a little complicated, but I'll explain it. So you have a $5,000 non-refundable application fee. If you qualify as social equity, you get a 50% discount from that. You also have a $60,000 license fee. If you qualify as social equity, you get a 50% discount on that as well. What's important to note about the licensing fee is that it's not due until the state has granted the provisional license. So really, the upfront cost before you get a license is $2,500 if you qualify as social equity. If you do not qualify as social equity, you pay the full price for the non-refundable application fee, you pay the full price for the licensing fee, and in addition to that, you have to demonstrate to the state that you have the liquidity to actually start the business. So they require a $50,000 surety bond to demonstrate that. So all in all, if you don't qualify as social equity, the cost to pursue a license minimum is going to be $115,000. The second license type is the craft grow. So the state is going to release 100 new licenses for craft grow, again, in 2 different waves. And no entity can own more than 3 craft grow licenses. The cost for a craft grow is significantly lower than the cost for a dispensary. If you want to start a craft grow, you have $5,000 non-refundable. You have the $40,000 licensing fee for a total of $45,000. If you qualify as social equity, then the cost of that is half. So you're paying, $22,500 for the cost of a craft grow license. Third, you have the infuser license. This is what people would have if they're, if they're creating edibles. So if you're making brownies or gummies, or if you're making lotions or things that people might use in other ways that include either THC or CBD, this is the license for that sort of business. The cost for executing the application process for the infuser license is the $5,000 non-refundable fee, the $5,000 license fee, so $10,000 total, and if you qualify as social equity, you get 50% off of that. The last license type is the transporter license. The state is releasing an unlimited number of transporter licenses. This license is also relatively low cost for entry. You have a $5,000 non-refundable application fee, and you have a $10,000 licensing fee. Again, for each of these license categories, the licensing fee is not due until the state has granted you the provisional license. In terms of the timeline, the first date is August the 26th. Currently, medical cannabis has been legal in Illinois for years. There are 55 medical retailers, and there are 16 medical cultivators. These licensees have first bite at the apple. So on August 26th, the state will publish the application that allows the current operators to obtain their recreational or adult use license. The next date is October 1st. That's when the state is going to publish the application for new dispensary licenses. So for those of you in this room who are interested in having a dispensary, this is the date when the state is going to publish the application, and then you know what you'll need to submit in order to get the application. The next date that's really important is January 1st. There are 3 important things happening on January 1st. Number 1 is that the existing medical operators will commence adult use sales. So that will be the date when you can go to a dispensary throughout Illinois and be able to purchase cannabis legally as an adult. The second important thing that's happening on January 1st is that the state is going to publish applications for the non-retail license categories. So for craft grows, for infusers, for transporters, that will be the date when you learn what the actual application entails. And the third, and what I would say most important thing that's happening on January 1st is that that's when the new dispensary applications are due. So I want to let that sink in for a little bit. We have between now and January 1st for you to cobble together all the components of an application and be able to submit that application to the state. It's not a whole lot of time. which is why we're doing this, so that you realize that you are up against the clock. The next date is March 31st. That's the date when the non-retail license applications are due to the state. So if you're interested in craft grow, if you're interested in infuser, if you're interested in transporter, that's the date when the applications for those licenses are due. The next date is May 1st. This is when the state is going to award up to 75 new dispensary licenses. And up to is a key part of that, because we don't know how many the state is going to award, but that's sort of the threshold that they're striving for. After May 1st, we have the non-retail licenses being awarded on July 1st of 2020. So this is when people who have the other non-retail licenses will find out whether or not they were granted these licenses by the state. At this point, there's a little bit of a pause. The state is statutorily required to do what's called a disparity study. And what that study entails is that they're looking at the demographics of everyone who's received a license, including the medical operators, the people who receive licenses in Wave 1 for both retail and non-retail. And really what they're looking for is whether or not the characteristics, the demographics of the people reflect the priorities of the legislatures when they sign the bill. Do the owners reflect the diversity of the state of Illinois? If the owners do not reflect the diversity of the state of Illinois, then the state will put some corrective measure in place so that Wave 2 of licenses do reflect the diversity of the state of Illinois. So on March 1st is when the disparity study is due. Once that happens, December 21st is when the state is going to release the balance of licenses for all license categories. So we'll have 110 additional dispensary licenses released on December 21st of 2021. We'll have 60 craft grow and 60 infuser licenses all issued on December 21st of 2021. At that point, there will be no more outstanding licenses. However, there is an option for the state to increase the number of licenses that are available. So, perhaps, if market dynamics permit, they may release even more licenses in the future, but there's no guarantee of that. I've talked a lot about social equity, and really the concept of social equity and who social equity is, I think it begins back when Richard Nixon was president. He, along with his chief of staff, identified his chief political opponents. And they decided that their chief political opponents were hippies and black people. And the best way to suppress the power of his chief political opponents was to criminalize cannabis. It's a very specific definition of what it means to be social equity. But before I go into it, I just want to make this qualification that we are working with the best information we have available now. So there are 3 ways that you can qualify as a social equity applicant. Number 1 is that 51% of the owners have resided for 5 of the past 10 years in an area that is considered an area of disproportionate impact. And I'll define that in the next slide. The second way to qualify is that 51% of the owners have been arrested, charged for, or convicted of a cannabis crime that is expungible under this law. And if you've not been arrested, then someone in your immediate family has been. So either mother, father, daughter, son, spouse. That's the second way to qualify as social equity. The third way to qualify for social equity is if at least 51% of your employees meet one of these 2 requirements. So this is the state's effort to not only provide restorative justice for people who've been caught up in the legal system due to cannabis, but also the state's effort to develop areas that are economically depressed. So in order to qualify as a disproportionately impacted area, one of 4 things has to be true. Either the poverty rate in the area is at least 20%, or at least 75% of the children in the area rely on federally subsidized school lunches. The third way is that at least 20% of the household rely on SNAP. And then the fourth way is that the area's unemployment rate is at least 120% of the federal unemployment rate for the last 2 years. So your area has to meet one of those criteria and also be an area that has experienced high policing due to cannabis. So this is the area where the Department of Commerce is going to provide more clarity. They're going to analyze the census tracts throughout Illinois and determine which census tracts meet these requirements. The reason it's important to know if you qualify as social equity or to know if you live in an area of disproportionate impact is because the state is providing a very robust set of tools to help aid those people in their pursuit of a license. Those tools include additional points in the application. There are a total of 250 points in the application. 50 of those points go to people who qualify as social equity. So that means if you qualify for social equity, you automatically get a 20% bump in the number of points that you get relative to everybody else. That's huge. The other one is the Cannabis Business Development Fund. This is the $30 million fund that the state has set aside to provide low-interest loans, grants, and incubation services to people who qualify as social equity. Grant money you don't have to pay back. That's huge. The third is the 3R program, Restore, Reinvest, and Renew. This is a program that's bringing together stakeholders throughout the community so that they can use the proceeds from cannabis tax dollars to invest in the economic development of areas that have been disproportionately impacted. I want to dive a little bit more into this in this category about how do you finance your business. Now, earlier, we talked about the cost of a license application depending on the sort of license that you're interested in pursuing. These are not trivial numbers, even with the discount. So it's really good that the state has resources available to people to apply for loans. The first and most important is the Cannabis Business Development Fund. As I mentioned, a part of this fund is intended to make low-interest loans to people who qualify as social equity. So this is money that you obviously have to pay back, but the state isn't trying to gouge you with, really high interest rates. They want to ensure that people can use this financing, they have some skin in the game, and then use that financing toward an application or toward operating the business once it's already started. The other part of that is grants. So this is free money, you don't have to pay it back. You can use it either in your pursuit of the application or you can use it once you've received a license to operate. This is one of the things that is really important to me, is that the Department of Commerce is in charge of this fund. And there is a lot of work on the Department of Commerce's plate right now. They have to define disproportionately impacted areas. They have to define, what it means to be social equity. They have to define the terms of the grant. They have to define the terms of the small business loan. I have concern that these resources may not be available on October 1st when the licenses are published. If the resources are not available on October 1st when the licenses are published, then that means the people who are intended to benefit from those resources will not be able to use those resources to navigate the application process. And if that happens, that means the only people who will be able to go after the licenses are going to be the people who have pockets deep enough to go after the licenses. And so that then creates concern about what will the demographics of the licensees look like. So call up your representatives or whomever, whatever you need to do to make sure the Department of Commerce recognizes the urgency of making sure these resources are available for everyone in this room on October 1st. Bootstrapping your business. Not everybody is going to qualify for financing or help from the Cannabis Business Development Fund. So then the question is, if you don't qualify, what do? You're gonna have to do the same thing most other people do when they're starting new businesses. But the first thing you want to do is to define what kind of financing you're looking for. And broadly speaking, there are two different types. There's equity and there's debt. Equity is money that you don't have to pay back. So these are people, friends, family perhaps, who are giving you money, and in exchange for that money, they are taking a percentage ownership in your business. The second type of capital is debt. This is money that you have to pay back, but in exchange for the cash, you don't have to give up any ownership in your business. So depending on what your priorities are, how you'd like your business to be structured from a financing perspective, you can have one or the other or some combination of the two in terms of how you finance your business. Now, once you've decided whether you want to do equity or debt, then you've got a few options for how you go about financing your company. The best way is your own savings. So if you've saved up money and you think this is a great way to deploy your savings, then have at it. Another way is through friends and family. You know, individually, you might not have $35,000 or however much it's going to take to apply for the license. But if you get together with some cousins, mom, dad, whomever, and you pool your resources, then you might be able to use those pooled resources to pursue an application. Third is bringing on business partners. Maybe you've had a great working relationship with someone in the past and you think they'd be a great partner in a cannabis business. So then you partner up with them and you decide to split it 50-50 and you both bring in capital so that you can operate the business with the capital that both of the business partners bring into it. The other way to do it is through angel investors. Angel investors are typically people who are accredited. They're people who invest casually and they're willing to take a bet on early stage companies. Another way is my company, Good Tree Capital. We make small business loans to companies nationwide. We obviously have requirements around how we finance things, so depending on what your profile is, we might be a viable option for you. And then the last, and I'd say the least desirable option, is a personal credit card. They have really high interest rates, but if you already have the credit card, then you can use that capital as a way of financing your business.
Hi guys, my name is Sharon Data G. I'm the founder and CEO of Elev8 Cannabis. We're a multi-state operator. We have shops in Oregon and Massachusetts, and hopefully here in Illinois. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, so it's really great to be back home. What makes Illinois cannabis industry different and unique? They're the first state to legalize cannabis through a legislative process. So when you look at every other state right now, all the 33 states with some type of cannabis legalization, they went through a ballot process where they asked the people, the voters, whether or not they want cannabis in their state. They said yes, they legalize it. Here in Illinois is different because Congress legalized cannabis here in Illinois. Expungement for more than 750,000 people. This is huge. A lot of states that are currently legalized, they do not really have this process right now. So Illinois is really setting the standard. And these are people with low offenses. So if you have less than 30 grams of cannabis possession and you got arrested for that, your record is automatically expunged. Some people might have higher case where you actually have to go through a process to get your case expunged, but there is a pathway to get that done. Real estate is huge in every state, every other state. Before you can even apply and submit an application, the first thing you have to have is real estate. $30 million, and they're investing into minorities. So $30 million grant to kickstart minority-owned businesses, where if you need help applying for your business, you can use this grant, or you need help just kickstarting, bootstrapping your business, this is another option for you. So real estate and automatic process. Illinois regulation slightly lowers the cost of entry to get into the cannabis industry. So I touched on real estate and I kind of emphasized on it a little bit. So because you need real estate and the zoning requirements, so in every state you have to be 1,000 square footage away from a K-12 grade. You have to be 1,000 or 500 square footage away from existing dispensary or existing cannabis business. So this limits your option on where you can actually acquire properties because of the zoning requirement. And what that does is supply and demand, right? There's a limited amount of supply. There's a huge amount of demand for real estate. So what that does does, it increases the value of whatever real estate property. I don't even care if it's on the south side in Inglewood. You can sell it for, if you want to open up your cannabis business there, you can sell your property that's worth $100,000. If that cannabis company really wants to be there, they're willing to pay $1 million, $5 million. They don't care because they have the capital to back them, especially those big corporations. So a lot of people in different states, they use the LOI, letter of intent, they get their property, secure it, they know they like it. One thing about LOI that you guys should know, it's not binding. So you can't go to court and say, hey, look, we got this, and this is just a skeleton to say, hey, once this process go through, now you can build on the body and say this is a definitive agreement. Purchase and sale, you can also just buy the property outright. If you really believe that you're going to get your license, just buy the property. That's what we have done. We like being our own landlord, and we don't have to really deal with another person telling us X, Y, and Z. A big thing too is contingency clause. This has saved my life big time. So we have friends right now in Boston. They're spending about $100,000 a month on a lease in a property in Boston, right? We have friends in Cali right now, they're spending about $30,000 for a lease in Cali right now. And you look at that, they're not guaranteed their license. You're spending that much money, and the reason why they can get away with it is because they understand, before I can go through this application process, I need real estate. So people are charging you out the galore, and you can also have a lease. If you have a lease, have a contingency clause that states, upon getting approval, you're spending that much money, we can continue this lease. If I don't, this lease, we can terminate it without, affecting you. We have friends right now, they're in a lease of 5 years, they're spending $30,000, and they didn't get their license. Guess what? They're stuck with the property, and no one in their right mind that's trying to start a business would pay $30,000 unless you're in the, to rent out a building for 1,500 square footage. That is insane. So you want to make sure you have a contingency clause in all your agreement. Automatic process, this is only for Chicago. The alderman has so much power and authority in the sense of they can say yes or no. It's similar in different cities and state, but here in Chicago, I want to make sure you guys notice. And also Mayor Lightfoot kind of changed up the game a little bit. She made it where, you can, if your alderman don't want you to have a business in a certain place in their jurisdiction, you can actually now appeal this and say, hey, look, I think that, they might be, they just think I'm ugly or they look like me. It doesn't matter, and you can actually fight this decision and have them, revisit the decision and see whether or not you can get your license. And honestly, if you cannot get your alderman's support, get out of Chicago, go somewhere else, or find a different place. You don't want to waste your time, your money, your investment. That takes a lot from your sanity too. Another thing too, I would say get the community involved. A lot of people like to, imagine the alderman as a bad person, but at the end of the day, the alderman works for their people. So try to understand what the aldermen are, trying to do for the community, what the people want in that community, and really start engaging with that and propose that to the alderman, because you're going to make a lot of money in the cannabis industry. Right now, shops are, in Massachusetts, they're making $300,000 a day, $100,000 a day. So there's going to be money. You just got to make sure that you're giving back to the community at the same time and leverage that. The application process and eligibility. So qualifying must have, I would say in every state you go to, 24-hour camera system. This is a must have. You must have a safe where overnight, you take all your product, you have to put it in the safe. You also have an ATM. So right now, when you're looking at a cannabis business, it's still federally illegal. You have 280E. So most businesses, 80% of cannabis business are cash-only businesses, right? So the rest of them, at 20%, are debit and credit cards. So you want to make sure that you have an ATM provider, or you can get into the ATM game like I would do. Application process. These are things that I would say you can start doing right away, right? Like you can start getting all this paperwork ready. So when that application date like Siki said, comes open, you already have this ready. You can just submit it as upon request. So a few things is fingerprint and background check. You're also looking at, full disclosure of bankruptcy, loan defaults. If you have any of that, get those paperwork. Child support, if you're paying your child support, if you're not paying it, start paying it so you're in good graces. If you also looking at, operating in partnership agreement, if you're looking to be in a partnership with somebody, you got to make sure, you present that agreement, whatever percentage or equity ownership is being owned, you make sure you disclose it. Another thing is a lot of people want to be silent investors because they work in an IT firm, they work in a big Fortune 500 company, and they don't want to be associated with cannabis. Guess what? If they want to be in it, they have to list their name on it. So you got to make sure you disclose this with your investors, so there's a lot of transparency into that. How the application is scored. This is, like Siki says, you have a maximum of the 250 points that you can obtain. If you're from Illinois, you get a point just being a, part of the Illinois. You also have a point just being a veteran. So if you're a veteran, please take advantage of it. I want you, study this, master this. This is how every state we go to, if they require a scoring point, we build our team accordingly. If you're looking at giving out equity, you're looking at bringing people onto your board, you want to make sure that they meet some of this criteria so it elevates you to get the most point possible, right? 250, that's how I go. I don't want nothing less than that. Ancillary business, this is an area where a lot of people are not really looking into, and they're missing out on huge opportunities. And here are the reason why, if you are an IT person, you went to school for, social work, you went to school, whatever you went to school for, whatever your passion might be, you can take your passion and bring it into the cannabis industry, right? So, for example, ATM. 80% of cannabis businesses are cash only, right? So they have to use their card, ATM, get cash out, then pay you. Guess what? With every ATM, there's something called a salt charge, where they charge you $3 per transaction. Imagine in Massachusetts right now, an average customer per day is 1,000 customers or 3,000 customers that go into NADA. NADA has 3,000 customers. They're right there, and they get about 3,000 people per day, right? That is $3 per transaction every time someone uses their ATM. They're making $3, right? $3 times 3,000 people, that's like $9,000, right? So then you take that, you times that in a year, you're making it millions off this ancillary business. Then you're looking at real estate. We touched on real estate being really, it's hard to acquire real estate. You have 1,000 square footage buffer. You have 1,000 to 1,500 square footage buffer from being away from another dispensary. So you want to leverage real estate. If you know real estate, Chicago, Illinois, leverage it. Make it your own business. Start finding different places that meet this criteria and start posting them, start selling them. Because what happens is, whatever your payout was for a regular business or regular real estate, you're going to times it by 10. Photographer, marketing, right now, SEOs, you can't really post cannabis businesses on different sites just because it's still federally illegal. You can't put Facebook ad, you can't have billboards, you can't do different things. So you can leverage your marketing service, research what platforms can you use in the cannabis industry. How can you leverage that? How can you benefit your end users or the dispensary owners and present to them, because they want this. A lot of them are not educated in this aspect, so leverage your skill set and get them. Photographers, you also have salespeople, security. Just for our security alone in one of our shops, we spent $40,000 just for cameras, just for a key card, to, just get in, get out, pinpoint. We spent $40,000. Who does that? That's a lot of money, but the cannabis industry is heavily regulated, so you're gonna have to spend a little bit of money. So the 3R program, Siki touched on it, restore, reinvest, renew. So this program is just reinvesting in communities that have been most affected by the war on drugs. And also you have the agriculture department and the community college department. They're coming up with programs to invest and train people and students in low income. So, they're trying to train them so they can go into the workforce. Running a dispensary, politics and networking, everything is politics and networking. You want to make sure that you build a relationship with your alderman, your mayor, whoever you're working with, whatever jurisdiction you're in, you want to make sure you build a relationship with the people and your alderman. This is really important. It makes your life a lot easier. And getting to know who your providers, product providers are. Build that relationship with them. Get into the cannabis industry, because the cannabis industry is super small. Almost everyone knows each other. They're only going to give out less than 300 licenses. Leverage that. Relationship is key, especially now when you're looking at asking for a discount on a product or anything like that. Why would they give you a discount? You have not built that relationship. It's easier for you to get to know the CEO of a major company in the cannabis industry because there's just so few people. Building your team. This right here, it goes back to when you're the score point. Also, these are 4 key people I say you need. This is just my opinion when you're looking to start a cannabis business. The 4th person I would say is, you can take them out, but 3 key people I would say no matter what you should have is a COO, someone that's really organized, that understands the training, that understands the rules and regulation that the state you're looking to go into, what they have. I would say a CFO or CPA. A CFO to me looks like someone that you are looking to grow with. A CPA looks to me like someone that you can contract out, make sure they're, making sure your books are good, making sure that, you're just ready for tax time, right? You can do a combination of both to get a CPA and a CFO. But the biggest thing too I want to mention is your exit strategy. A lot of people are not looking to be in the cannabis industry for the rest of their life. They're looking to, get their license and sell as soon as possible so they can make millions of dollars and say deuces, right? If you're one of those people, this is really crucial, right? Because when someone is looking at acquiring your business, they want to make sure your book is good. If your book is not good, they're not really interested. They're going to move on to the next person. So this is really crucial. Every expense possible, you're listing it down. And another crucial part is this, because cannabis is still federally legal, there's 280E. The taxation on the cannabis industry, as a retailer, you can only write off cost of goods sold, right? So that's the only write-off you can write off. Imagine you invest about $500,000 into making your dispensary look good, looks beautiful, and your thought process is, as a regular business, you can write this off, right? In the cannabis industry, you cannot write that $500,000 off. So this is really crucial, having a CPA and a CFO jotting down what you can write off, what you can't write off, and finessing the system a little bit and make sure you guys have the most write-off possible, right? An attorney, super important. Attorney saves me a lot of money. I pay him a lot of money, but he saves me a lot of money, right? So we had a case in Massachusetts. We're looking at buying a property. It was a super expensive. My attorney drafted up the contract. The landlord had different things he needed to do with the property in order to meet standard for us to buy it. He did not do it, right? So what happened was, because of the verbiage my attorney put in there, we got the property for a steal. Like, I'm talking a steal. And the property is in great high traffic downtown location, really beautiful. So attorney is really great. A CMO, if you're looking into scaling and branding your company to every state possible like we are, I would say CMO is really crucial. You want to make sure that you get your brand messaging across. Really just what are you about, and get that message out to people. Product sourcing and markup. How many people know how to mark up a product real quick? Okay, you guys know the math equation, and for some of you guys that don't know how to do a product markup, I think this would be really great. I just want us to do an experiment for people. If you can pull out your phone and get like your calculator out, I want us to try this real quick. So let's just say you're in the retail, you're in a dispensary owner, you bought a product for $3,000, right? A pound, there's 453 grams in a pound. If you then do 3,000 divided by 453, what do you guys get? I hope it's $6. Okay, so you got $6, right? So now when you have $6, how many of you would like to get your product up to a 200% markup? How many of you guys? Okay, so times that by 2 and give me the number you get. You got 12? 12? 12? That's how you do your markup. That's a 200% markup right there. Good job, guys. Thank you, guys. So it's the same principle when you're trying to do 500% markup, 600, 900. You just multiply that, divide whatever the cost is, and you just mark it up that accordingly. Brandon, I touched on Brandon before. I want to talk on Select. And how many of you guys know Select and Cura? They are one of the biggest cartridge brand in the cannabis industry. They just sold for billions of dollars. They have stores in Oregon, and they also have stores in Cali. How did they sell for billions of dollars? If you go to Oregon right now, Oregon is an oversaturated market. So there's about 3,000 farmers, there's 500 retailers. When you look at that, Cura is a farmer. That's a lot of cultivators, right? You have products that are selling for $9. Cura is selling their product for $35 for the same product, but people are buying Cura Select product. Why is that? It's because of branding. It's great branding. And so if you're looking at, elevating your company, being into, going to multiple states, you want to make sure branding is a key focus. So customer acquisition, customer retention. So a little story about me. When I first opened my shop, I was 23. I was hungry, and I'm the type of person where you tell me I can't do something, you got me messed up. So I'm gonna do that thing that I set my mind into. So my first shop was, I had $50,000 in a dream. Man, it was hard. When I talk about, I built out my whole building. I had YouTube was my best friend. I had a couple of friends come with me. You talking about putting out floors? I put the floors down. I put the security cameras up, put the safe up, bought the safe. I did whatever it took to meet the state rules and regulation, and we did it. We opened up. Before we opened up, I was so broke that I couldn't buy product. You need $500,000 to $1 million to open up a cannabis business. This little dude, 23 years old, I was 21 at the time. It took me, 3 years to just find a property. But it took me that long to get real estate. But at the end of the day, it was a process. It was not easy. It just did not come to me. And what I'm trying to articulate here, customer retention is key, guys. We were in an oversaturated market where there was dispensaries everywhere, and we were still doing great. We were still increasing year over year. Revenue was growing. So, you want to make sure you treat your customer good. Integrity is key, guys. I think that, no matter what, you're going to do great no matter what if you're in the cannabis industry. But if you're looking at, to do really great, make sure your company has integrity and you take care of your customers. To understand, the marketing costs. So marketing is big, really big. You have a restriction on how you can market, but then how do you know what is generating you customers? And that is something that, for me, I think is really important. Where do we throw our money and where should we pull back our money? So what we did in our store that helped us out to understand where we should be focusing our money was we did a survey. So every customers, we have 5 platforms we were investing our capital in: Leafly, Weed Maps, local newspaper. We had, in Oregon, they amended it where you can have a billboard, but you can say certain things. You couldn't say certain things. You have to put a warning label there. So we had a billboard. So every customer that came into our shop, we asked them, how did you hear about us? We started tallying that survey up, and we looked at it after a month. We said, okay, this is what's working, this is what's not. Then we put the money into advertisement that was working to generate us customers. So this is really key, so you're just not throwing money everywhere. Any questions?